I don't know if you can sense it, but there's a feeling of excitement in the shop today, in the sense that I think we're going to make some good progress on our John Deere 430 standard project. Up till now, I've had all these components in a smaller chunk form, so I'm able to move them around the shop as we're working on other projects, kind of tuck things away to stay out of the way, basically. But today we're going to start taking those small chunks and making one big chunk by installing the final drives on our transmission, maybe even set our hydraulic unit on top, just to put things together and start almost looking like a tractor. I'm going to hold off on anything going forward until we rebuild the engine, but for today we're looking at maybe 12 bolts and nuts to put everything together. It's going to take a little fiddling, a little alignment to get everything squared away, but it should be a good project and should look like a big step forward by the time we're all said and done. So looking forward to it. Let's see what we can accomplish. So the first thing we're going to do is a simple balancing act. We're going to lift our transmission off the workbench. We are going to precariously perch it on these sawhorses over here. This way we have access to both sides to mount the final drives once they are ready to be put in place. Let's see if we can raise him up and move him over. One thing to think about when we are putting our finals on is I'm going to put this brake shaft back in place through this opening. I don't know if I can get it in with both finals in place. I think I'm going to put a board across down here to kind of keep that back end from dropping down, so I'm able to do that. So let's see what we got. This one might be cherry. Somewhat stable. It'll be good enough for what we have to do. I'm going to start with the final drive on this right side of the tractor as you sit on it. There's a little tinkering to do with the bracket on this left side, which we'll talk about later. So right side first. So here we have our right hand side final drive hoisted up. Key is to try and get this as close to, I guess, level as possible. I can fiddle with it a little bit as we get it up closer to the transmission. Before we can join the transmission and final, we got to account for the brakes. We are going to put our first brake disc on the final, like that. And then on the transmission, we are going to put a disc in place, and then our actuator at the top of the disc. It's got these little tabs that sort of keep that actuator in place. And our first challenge is going to be getting that axle in that brake disc and then getting the splines to line up with the splines on our final drive. So we'll hoist our final over, raise it up, and see what kind of alignment we can accomplish. Try and be very careful with our lift. Subtle movements can jar things around, and we don't want to disrupt that oil seal that we have in our transmission case. And let's see. I'm going to simultaneously advance my final while gently turning the axle shaft to turn the shaft on the inside of the transmission and get everything to line up with not only the differential but my second brake disc on the inside of our actuator here. We are pretty close. I've advanced it into the transmission where we are at the studs basically here. We have to account for our brake actuator on the bottom. You can kind of see this little guy down here maybe. I need to flip him up and get him inside the final so I can advance it a little farther. Let's see if we can do that. There we go. Is that going to be enough to... There we are. Bingo. So, I think we've got everything in alignment there. Might just be that last brake disc splines we have to squeeze in. There we are. Okay, this is going to be the first of our 12 nuts and bolts to secure this in place. You'll remember on the bottom we use a special sort of nut that holds the brake locking mechanism on it. So he goes in there. That's a 1-inch diameter, or 1-inch wrench anyway. The rest are 15/16 that we'll put on. The actual answer is I do not know. Okay. Now we're just going to gently snug those up. We're going to put a jack stand underneath this side for safety, and then drop everything down, move over to the other side. We are ready to duplicate our efforts with the left-hand side as you sit on the tractor. First thing, we'll advance our brake control shaft through. Because like I said, with the final drives on, I don't think there's enough clearance to put that in place. So he's in. And we have our brakes, just like before. Disc, actuator, and disc. Let's see if we can advance into place. Now we're going to be fighting a little more on this side because that final on the other side is going to be putting a little tension on. Your actuator up in there. Look at that. Our alignment must have been gooder on this side. Brake lock, we'll call it a nut up there on the front bottom. standard 15/16 up here on the top. So what's unique about this tractor is on the back side of this left-hand final drive, we are going to install an additional bracket. And this bracket is used when there is the option of a remote hydraulic valve installed. And that was not something that was very common, especially on a standard model tractor. And to be truthful, I don't even know if I'm gonna install the remote valve back on the tractor because they can be very oily and very messy. So it's not gonna hurt anything to have the bracket in place. If I do go that route, and you know, I say I'm not gonna do something and I end up doing it. But if I decide to put it on there, the bracket's there, and it's not gonna hurt anything to be there. So we'll put it on and tighten up our nuts here. According to the manual, these nuts should be about 100 foot-pounds when they are tightened. So we'll do that after the fact. We'll just sort of get everything in place for now and do a torquing at the end. All right, we're going to release a little pressure, hoping that our jack stand on the other side is enough to hold everything stable. Just seems to be. Well, we've got our final drives mounted back on our transmission case, and now I can do a little test to see if everything turns nice. If I turn the input shaft, I think I'm in 5th gear. You can see the final drive gears moving. This tractor, I don't believe, is a limited slip differential, so I can hold one and that one should still be turning. Yes. Good. I can't remember which one is reverse. One of those two. But we seem to be moving okay. I do not feel any binding, any sort of crunching. There's 5th right there. We moved through okay, so I'm happy that our finals are lined up in the differential. Our brakes are not binding at this point. Now we are going to torque these nuts down to 100 foot-pounds. Those 1-inchers, which take a deeper socket simply because of that lock extension. Torqued and in place. We'll double check that again later, but now see if we can't drop him down to a more stable position and throw that hydraulic unit on top. All right, we've relocated our finals and transmission housing assembly. Now, the job is to see if we can get this hydraulic unit that we rebuilt, it's been about a year ago now, from here to there. And against my better judgment, I'm going to see if I can't just lift it out of there and set it up on top. Don't try this at home, kids. This piece is heavy, and this will either be a smashing success or a good bit of material for the blooper reel, I guess, at the end, if this doesn't go good. Let's see. Right about now is when that vein's popping out of my fork. This should line up just about like that. So now we have to get those last of the 4 of the 12 bolts, fasten this down, and it is mission accomplished. We're making a back half of a tractor assembly. I am not going to put on the torque tube on the front or any of the other pieces, which I do have ready. I want to wait until the engine's rebuilt so I can throw everything together all at once, but this is a nice big component that I can kind of wheel off to the side now. It frees up some space on the workbenches because we are going to rebuild the remote valve, we're going to rebuild the engine, a couple other things, so having the room will be nice, but it's even nicer taking a look at this and seeing all the hard work coming together into a tractorish looking object. So, as always, thanks for watching. Hope you check in next time for whatever we get into next. I'm going to get some bolts if I can find them and reattach our hydraulic unit to the transmission case.